This story is a powerful drama centered on resilience, prejudice, and redemption. At its core, it's about one young black girl's journey of being underestimated, ridiculed, and dismissed, only to rise above the very people who tried to silence her. Her story is not just about academic triumph. It's about breaking social barriers and confronting deep-rooted racism in a system designed to overlook her worth. It's a story of empowerment, intelligence, and the fire that burns inside when someone is told they're not enough. It explores how isolation and alienation can birth a quiet storm, one that doesn't seek revenge with violence, but with brilliance, grace, and undeniable achievement. Inspirational drama with emotional and social commentary undertones. There are no car chases or physical battles here. Instead, the battlefield is the classroom, the weapon is knowledge, and the victory is earned with dignity. The core idea is a mix of redemption and underdog victory. A young girl walks into a space where she doesn't belong, or rather, where people think she doesn't. The odds are stacked against her. Teachers ignore her. Students mock her. No one expects her to win. But instead of shrinking, she studies. She listens. She waits. And when her moment comes, she shines so brightly that no one can look away. Vindication and pride. The story is designed to make the reader feel anger at the injustice, and then pride and satisfaction as the protagonist rises. There's also a strong current of nostalgia, especially for those who've ever felt out of place in school. Anyone who's ever sat in silence while others assumed they were less than will see themselves in her. Her victory feels personal, not just for her, but for everyone who's ever been told they don't belong. The title itself asks an implicit question. What did she do to prove everyone wrong? That question drives the reader forward. They need to know how she overcame the odds. Was it revenge? Was it intelligence? Did she expose someone? Did she win something? This curiosity acts as the thread pulling the story forward. Are you lost? The voice came from behind her, sharp, loud, and laced with sarcasm. Tiana froze at the door of room 304, her fingers tightening around the strap of her backpack. She turned slowly, already knowing what she'd see. A boy in a varsity jacket leaned back in his chair, his feet kicked up on the desk. Behind him, 3 girls giggled. One of them mouthed, "Wrong room, sweetheart." But the sign beside the door was clear. Advanced Placement Calculus, Mr. Dalton. She was in the right place. Still, Tiana hesitated. Not because she was unsure, but because she already knew how this was going to go. She'd lived it before. The long stares. The whispered jokes. The way teachers acted surprised every time she raised her hand. This time, it just happened faster. Need help finding remedial math? The boy added, louder now. His friends laughed harder. Tiana didn't answer. Instead, she walked into the classroom, her shoes quiet against the polished floor. The seats were almost full. 23 students. White faces turned to watch her like she didn't belong. Because to them, she didn't. She was the only black student in the class. In the school. She sat down at the only open desk, front row, center. The laughter behind her quieted, but the tension thickened like smoke. Mr. Dalton walked in a moment later, glancing around the room. His eyes landed on her, paused, then flicked away like she was a detail out of place. He didn't say welcome. He didn't ask her name. He just began scribbling equations on the board. Tiana opened her notebook. Her hand was steady, but her chest was tight. She'd transferred here just a week ago. New town, new rules, same cold reception. She could feel the eyes on her. Watching, judging, waiting for her to fail. She didn't plan on giving them the satisfaction. At lunch, she sat alone. Not because she wanted to, but because no one made room. The cafeteria buzzed with chatter, laughter, and inside jokes she wasn't part of. She heard someone whisper affirmative action as she passed their table. Another muttered, token. Tiana didn't flinch. She'd heard worse. But that didn't make it hurt less. Still, she remembered her mother's words that morning. They can't stop you from learning. Just don't let them unteach who you are. So she studied. Harder than ever. She read late into the night. Watched videos. Solved equations until her fingers cramped. And all the while, she said nothing. Not a single word. Not even when Mr. Dalton forgot to call on her. Not even when the boy in the varsity jacket knocked her books to the floor. She just picked them up and kept going. Because Tiana knew something they didn't. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was fuel. They saw a girl sitting quietly in the front row. But what they didn't see was the storm building just beneath her skin. A storm ready to prove them all wrong. Tiana Simone Brooks was 15 years old when she walked into that AP Calculus classroom and walked straight into a war she didn't start. Born in Atlanta, Georgia, she was the only child of two fiercely determined parents. Her mother, a civil rights attorney, taught her to never shrink herself for anyone. Her father, a mechanical engineer, gave her a love for numbers and logic and the quiet power of observation. But even those lessons hadn't fully prepared her for Rosedale High. Rosedale was nestled in an affluent suburb in upstate New York, where the lawns were perfectly trimmed and the smiles just a little too polite. Her father's job transfer had brought them there 6 months ago, and with it came the promise of better education, more opportunity, and top-tier programs. What no one warned her about was the coldness that hid behind the school's prestige. The stairs, the isolation, the assumption that she didn't belong. Tiana had transferred in mid-semester. No orientation, no welcome, just a printed schedule and a map of the sprawling brick campus that looked more like a private college than a public high school. She was used to being one of the smartest students in the room. In her old school, teachers encouraged her. Classmates came to her for help. She'd even started a tutoring program for kids struggling with math. But here, they looked at her like an intruder. Not because of her intellect, but because of her skin. And while no one said it out loud, the message was clear. You don't belong here. Tiana was reserved by nature. Not shy, just careful. She spoke with precision, moved with purpose, and carried a calm intensity that made people underestimate her. She didn't chase attention. She earned respect. But Rosedale didn't respect her. In her first week, no one sat next to her in the cafeteria. No one asked her to join a club, even though she signed up for 3. When she offered an answer in class, teachers either ignored her or acted surprised she was right. Even worse, some tried to explain her own answers back to her, slower, like she hadn't understood what she herself had just said. It was condescending, infuriating, and yet she said nothing. She just kept showing up, doing the work, letting her grades speak. But it wasn't just academics that shaped her. Tiana had a love for rhythm, jazz especially. She played piano like she solved equations, with method and magic. Her room back home had been filled with books, sheet music, and trophies from math leagues and music competitions. Here in Rosedale, all of that felt far away. Her sanctuary now was the school library, a quiet corner in the back where no one went. There, she'd pull out her spiral notebooks filled with formulas, problem sets, and practice exams. She didn't just want to pass the upcoming state math championship. She wanted to dominate it. Because the math team tryouts were in 3 weeks. And if she made the team, she'd be the first black student in the school's history to do it. That was her quiet mission. Not to be liked, not even to fit in, but to make space where none was offered. To carve her presence into every chalkboard, every test score, every competition banner, until even the people who doubted her had no choice but to acknowledge her. But beneath her calm surface, Tiana was tired. Tired of being polite to people who weren't. Tired of proving she deserved what others took for granted. Tired of carrying the weight of a stereotype on her shoulders. What she wanted, more than anything, was to just be seen for who she was. A brilliant, curious, capable girl who loved solving impossible problems. But she knew better. In a place like Rosedale, she had to be twice as good just to be seen as equal. And she would be. She'd been invisible long enough. It happened on a Tuesday. 3rd period. AP Calculus. Tiana had taken her usual seat in the 2nd row, close enough to the board, but far enough to avoid being a target. She pulled out her notebook, mechanical pencil, and calculator, the tools of war in a classroom where silence felt like judgment and curiosity was often mistaken for arrogance. Mr. Kessler, the teacher, was a tightly wound man in his early 40s, with a monotone voice and a taste for rhetorical questions he never expected real answers to. He prided himself on academic excellence and discipline, but his subtle favoritism wasn't hard to see. The white students got smiles. Tiana got scrutinized. Still, she excelled. Quietly. Consistently. Until that day. Pop quiz, Mr. Kessler announced, holding up a stack of papers. 10 questions. 20 minutes. Show your work. No calculators. Groans rippled through the room. Tiana straightened in her seat. Mental math was her strength. He passed out the papers. When he got to her desk, he paused. looked down at her. You'll want to double-check your work this time. Tiana, he said, voice low but laced with condescension. Last week's test. Well, let's just say I'm still reviewing it. Her hand froze in midair. She knew what he meant. She had scored a perfect 100. He just hadn't said it out loud yet. Instead, he insinuated, cast doubt, like a shadow trailing her every move. She gave him a polite nod, masking the slow burn rising in her chest. The quiz began. Tiana's pencil moved like lightning, smooth, precise, rhythmic. She was done in 15 minutes. Double-checked twice. She even boxed her final answers, just the way he liked. When time was up, Mr. Kessler collected the papers. But as he passed by her desk, he took hers and didn't add it to the stack. He tucked it beneath his gradebook. Tiana noticed. So did a few students near her. No one said a word. 2 days later, the quiz results were handed back. Everyone else got their papers. Tiana's was missing. She waited until the end of class to approach the desk. Mr. Kessler, she asked, voice steady. I didn't get my quiz back. He glanced at her, then looked down at his gradebook. Yes, about that. I flagged your paper for academic review. Tiana blinked. What? He folded his hands. Your answers were unusually advanced. Identical in logic and structure to a well-known solution set I've seen circulating online. I need to verify that your work is your own. You think I cheated? Her voice dropped, tight with disbelief. I'm saying, he replied, that I have reasonable doubts. This is a high-performing school. We hold a high standard of integrity. I'm sure you understand. She didn't reply. Not then. But inside, something cracked. It wasn't the accusation alone. It was the certainty in his voice. The smug confidence that, of course, she must have cheated. Because how could a black girl from out-of-state outscore his best students? Not without help. Not without dishonesty. He didn't see her as gifted. He saw her as suspicious. And now he was making it official. That evening, she told her parents. Her mother's jaw clenched. Her father's fingers curled into fists. But Tiana, surprisingly, didn't cry. I'm not going to let him win, she said flatly. I'm going to make sure no one ever questions me again. Her mom put a hand on her shoulder. You don't have to prove anything to these people, baby. Tiana shook her head. I know, but I will. The next morning, she walked into school with her head higher. She went straight to the principal's office and requested an academic integrity review hearing. Not just a defense. A challenge. She wanted her answers regraded by an outside board. Mr. Kessler hadn't expected that, and neither had the school. But Rosedale High had rules, and Tiana knew how to use them. She brought printouts of her old math league results, video footage of her solving similar problems in competition, letters from former teachers, even a flash drive with practice logs and solution walkthroughs she'd recorded for fun back in Atlanta. When the academic committee convened, she presented herself like a seasoned attorney. They listened. They watched. They were impressed. But one teacher still pressed the issue. Why not just retake the quiz, he asked. Same questions. Same conditions. That would settle everything. Tiana stared at him, then nodded once. Give me all 10. Right now. They handed her a blank copy of the quiz. This time, 5 teachers watched. She solved it in 12 minutes. Faster than before. She even offered alternate solutions for 2 of the problems, just to show her range. When she stood up, handing in her paper, she looked straight at Mr. Kessler. I hope that's enough integrity for you. The results came back 2 days later. Unanimous. No evidence of cheating. Work was original. Accusation was unfounded. Mr. Kessler never apologized. But he never doubted her again. And neither did anyone else. Because the incident had spread. Not just in her class. Across the whole school. Whispers turned to conversations. Curiosity turned into awe. Tiana Brooks, the girl no one sat with, had stood up to the system and won. And that was just the beginning. After the hearing, Tiana noticed a shift. It wasn't loud. No standing ovation. No parade down the hallways. But the silence around her changed texture. Where once it was cold and isolating, now it felt laced with curiosity, uneasy respect, even admiration. People who had never spoken to her began to offer brief nods. 1 or 2 classmates lingered at her locker, tossing out careful compliments masked as questions. That math stuff you did was kinda genius, one said, half smiling. Did you always know you were that smart? Tiana didn't brag. She didn't need to. Her quiet confidence had already spoken for her. But what no one saw coming, what she hadn't seen coming, was the effect her stand had on others. 2 days after her exoneration, a sophomore named Maya stopped her outside the library. "You don't know me," she said nervously, "but I just wanted to say thank you." Tiana raised an eyebrow. "For what?" Maya hesitated. "For speaking up. For standing your ground. My English teacher told me my writing was too mature to be mine. Said it had to be plagiarized. I didn't fight it, but after what you did, I think I'm going to." That was the moment something awakened in Tiana. It wasn't just about her anymore. It never really had been. The next few weeks brought change. It started small. Tiana began helping other students, quietly, one-on-one. She tutored during lunch, offered study guides, shared strategies. She started uploading video breakdowns of tricky problems and leaving QR codes on bulletin boards. Then came the school paper. A reporter named Jordan interviewed her. The article, titled "Against the Curve, Tiana Brooks and the Integrity Scandal That Shook Rosedale High," went semi-viral among students. The article painted her not as a victim, but a visionary, and it sparked something bigger. Soon, other stories surfaced. A Latinx student accused of cheating during a history test despite having extensive notes. A Korean-American student pulled from an advanced science lab after concerns about communication skills. Tiana began to see the pattern, how bias hid beneath policies and politeness. And she couldn't unsee it. That's when the idea came. A collective. A student-led initiative where high achievers from diverse backgrounds could mentor others, defend their rights, and challenge systemic inequities head-on. She called it the equation because it was never just about numbers. It was about balancing the scales. She pitched the concept to her guidance counselor, Ms. Raymond, a sharp woman with kind eyes and a reputation for being progressive. Ms. Raymond listened carefully, then leaned forward. "You've got something powerful here, Tiana, but you'll need more than a name. You'll need allies, structure, a reason for the school to let it grow." Tiana nodded. "Then I'll give them all three." Over the next month, the equation evolved from a Google Doc to a registered student organization. They held open meetings, created forums, published essays. Students began to pour in, Black, Asian, Latinx, even white students who wanted to dismantle the biases they saw, too. Tiana chaired it all, and slowly, her identity in the school began to change. She wasn't just the new girl anymore. She was a force, but it wasn't all smooth. Resistance came, subtle, strategic. Mr. Kessler stopped calling on her in class altogether. One teacher warned her she was getting a reputation for being difficult. Another administrator questioned whether her club was necessary in a school with already high academic standards. The pushback was real, and Tiana felt it. Late nights turned to early mornings. The exhaustion of being excellent and vocal weighed on her. She was still a teenager, but now with the pressure of a movement on her shoulders. One night, as she sat at the kitchen table, buried under club paperwork and math homework, her mother brought her tea. "You don't have to carry this all, T," she said softly. Tiana looked up, eyes tired but alive. "If I don't, who will?" Her mother smiled. "Then don't carry it alone." That next week, the equation partnered with teachers of color, parents, and alumni to launch a broader initiative, Project Proof. It wasn't just about defending students accused of cheating anymore. It was about rebuilding trust in brilliance that didn't fit a stereotype. About making excellence feel welcomed instead of watched. About changing the equation completely. One Friday morning, the school auditorium buzzed with excitement. Tiana had been asked to speak at the school's academic assembly, a first for a junior. As she stepped onto the stage, applause greeted her. Not polite, not performative, real. She looked out into the crowd, saw faces that used to avoid hers now filled with anticipation. And she spoke, not about being falsely accused, but about what came after. "I realized something when I was told I couldn't have possibly been that good," she said. "That moment was supposed to break me, but it built me, because I knew my worth, even when someone else didn't." She paused, then added, "But I don't want to be the exception. I want to be the beginning." The room erupted. That day, a wave began. Applications to join the equation doubled. Teachers started attending meetings. The school board invited Tiana to present policy recommendations for handling academic bias. And suddenly, Rosedale High was no longer just the school where a black girl was accused of cheating. It was the school where she proved herself, and then used her voice to make sure others wouldn't have to. She didn't know where it would all go. She wasn't thinking about college yet. or national recognition. She just knew this. The journey had begun, and there was no turning back. With the equation gaining momentum, the atmosphere at Rosedale High began to shift, but not entirely for the better. While many students celebrated Tiana's courage and leadership, there were others, teachers, parents, and even classmates, who didn't appreciate the disruption of the status quo. And slowly, the shadows began to gather. It started with a rumor. One of Tiana's teachers overheard it in the faculty lounge and passed it on discreetly. There's talk that she's being coached by activists, that this whole thing isn't her idea. Tiana heard about it from Ms. Raymond, who looked disappointed but not surprised. They're trying to discredit you, she warned. Standard playbook. Make it seem like you're a puppet. That way, they don't have to take you seriously. Tiana was furious. They can't believe a black girl is capable of organizing and thinking on her own. Some of them, Ms. Raymond said gently, don't want to. Then came the audits. 1 week, the equation's budget was frozen, pending review. Then their posters were taken down because they hadn't gone through the correct approval channels. Next, their meeting times were restricted. No more lunchtime sessions, only after school, and only in a cramped storage room that doubled as a janitorial closet. It's sabotage, said Jordan, the student reporter. They're trying to choke you with red tape. Tiana felt it. The weariness, the pressure, the sense that the system was tightening its grip, resisting every ounce of change she tried to push through. And for the first time since the scandal, doubt crept in. Her classmates began to waver, too. Some members of the equation stopped showing up. Not all at once, but one by one. I've got too much going on, one said. My parents don't want me involved in anything political, said another. Even Maya, the girl who had first thanked her for her bravery, confessed, I'm scared I'll get blacklisted. Colleges see this kind of stuff, right? Tiana couldn't blame them. She just wished they'd stayed a little longer. Then, the bombshell. A parent at a school board meeting stood up and demanded Tiana be suspended, pending investigation. Clearly this student has an issue with authority, the parent raged. She's inciting division under the guise of equity. And frankly, it's disruptive. This is a school, not a social justice playground. Tiana watched the live stream from her bedroom, fists clenched, heart pounding. They're calling me a troublemaker now, she muttered. Her mother placed a hand on her shoulder. It means you're making trouble for the right people. But things escalated quickly. The school board announced a formal review of all extracurricular clubs. The equation was the only one suspended during that period. Tiana received a notice that her leadership privileges were temporarily revoked. And then came the final blow. A letter, hand-delivered. Tiana Brooks, your academic record will be re-evaluated in light of questions raised during your prior investigation. Please prepare to submit evidence of your independent work. She couldn't believe it. They were reopening the case. Not because of new evidence, but because she had dared to lead. That night, Tiana sat alone in her room, overwhelmed by it all. The walls felt closer. The silence was sharp. She stared at her laptop, half a speech drafted, half a letter of resignation. I'm tired, she whispered to herself. I'm just a student. Why do I have to fight this hard just to exist? Her mom came in, holding a small box. This was your father's, she said, placing it on the desk. Tiana opened it. Inside, a medal from a civil rights march, a yellowed letter, and a photograph of her father standing beside John Lewis. He fought too, her mother said softly. Not because it was easy, but because someone had to. You're not the first in this family to shake foundations, baby. Tiana looked at the photo, and her heart steadied. The next morning, she didn't walk into the principal's office with a resignation letter. She walked in with a dossier, printouts of every email, minutes from every equation meeting, screenshots of faculty policies, statements from allies, a formal letter from the ACLU chapter her uncle helped her contact. This, she told the principal, is what your reevaluation will be met with. The principal blinked. She wasn't the scared, accused girl from before. She was a strategist now, and she had receipts. That same day, a coalition of teachers sent a petition to reinstate the equation. The student council passed a resolution in support of Tiana. The story got picked up by a local news station. And suddenly, Rosedale High found itself at the center of a broader conversation about racial bias, student voice, and the punishment of black excellence. Tiana didn't ask for it, but she didn't shy away either. She gave interviews. She showed up. She led. Still, the scars remained. People stared. Some whispered. A few teachers refused to meet her gaze. The tension didn't vanish. It thickened in some places. But so did the hope. One night, Tiana got an anonymous message. You don't know me, but I've been watching. You made me believe I could be more than just a stereotype. Thank you. She didn't know who it was, but it reminded her why she started. The equation was reinstated. Her academic record cleared once more, this time with an official apology attached. But she didn't celebrate with champagne or cheers. She celebrated by showing up to the next club meeting, with new folders, bigger plans, and an even stronger voice. Because she'd learned something invaluable. The obstacles weren't just part of the journey. They were the journey. And every tension, every sabotage attempt, every whisper behind her back, it had only sharpened her. Not just into a leader, but into a symbol. The day of the town hall arrived. Flyers had gone out. Emails had circulated. Students, parents, and media figures were invited. This wasn't just a school meeting. It had become a community event. The issue had grown larger than Rosedale High. Tiana stood backstage at the auditorium, her palms slightly sweaty, heart hammering beneath her blazer. Not from fear, but from the weight of it all. This was it. The moment everything had led up to. The principal was seated in the front row, flanked by school board officials. Local reporters filled the press section. Students lined the aisles, holding "We are the equation" signs they'd made themselves. Even her mother was there, standing tall, with pride gleaming in her eyes. Ms. Raymond gave her a reassuring nod before stepping up to the microphone to introduce her. And now, she said, please welcome a voice that refused to be silenced. Tiana Brooks. Applause erupted. Some students stood. Tiana stepped into the spotlight. She looked out into the crowd and took a breath. When I was accused of cheating, she began, it wasn't because I had done something wrong. It was because someone couldn't imagine that a girl like me, a black girl from the South Side, could have done something right. The room hushed. I was told I didn't belong in the advanced program, that I must have had help, that my work couldn't be mine. And that belief didn't come from facts. It came from bias. She paced slightly, eyes scanning the crowd. But I fought back. Not because I'm fearless, but because I was tired of pretending to be small. Her voice didn't crack. It rang like truth. She told them about the equation, how it started as a safe space, how it became a movement, how it was sabotaged, slandered, and almost destroyed by the very people who claimed to support growth and diversity. But when we asked for fairness, she said, we were called aggressive. When we asked for equity, we were labeled disruptive. And when we started winning, they rewrote the rules. A soft murmur ran through the crowd. She held up the printed letter of suspension from months ago. This is what fear of change looks like. Bureaucratic, quiet, and weaponized against those who dare to be excellent in a place not built for them. Then she paused, looked straight at the principal. I'm not here to ask for your permission to exist. I'm here to remind you that I already do. That my voice, and the voices of students like me, will no longer be filtered, muted, or dismissed. Applause rippled again, louder this time. Her classmates started standing. So did some parents. One teacher clapped with tears in his eyes. Tiana concluded with a challenge. This isn't just about me. It's about every student whose light was dimmed before it could shine. Every child told they were too loud, too bold, too smart. We're done dimming. She stepped back from the mic. The auditorium erupted into a standing ovation. After the event, reporters swarmed her. The principal tried to shake her hand. She nodded politely, but didn't linger. She had said what needed to be said, not just for herself, but for every student who would come after her. That night, her phone blew up. One message, from a freshman she barely knew, read, "Thank you for standing up. You changed how I see myself. I'm not afraid anymore." That was the victory, not the reinstatement, not the media coverage, not the reluctant applause of adults who finally had no choice but to listen. The victory was in the minds she had unchained. 2 weeks had passed since the town hall, and everything was different. Tiana wasn't just a student anymore. She had become a symbol, a name whispered in hallways with reverence, a face that meant possibility to those who once hid in the back of the class, unsure whether they were allowed to raise their hand. She had been reinstated with full honors. The official apology had been issued by the school board, publicly and without condition. They claimed it was a misunderstanding, a systematic error. Tiana didn't need their sugar-coated damage control. The truth had already spoken louder than their retractions ever could. The day she walked back into the advanced calculus class, no one looked at her the same. They didn't stare at her like a curiosity anymore. They looked like they saw her, and not just as the black girl who proved them wrong, but as a leader, a fighter, a young woman who refused to disappear when it would have been easier to stay quiet. In the weeks that followed, something even more powerful began happening. Students who had been silent started speaking. Sophia, the Latina girl who was always ignored during group projects, launched a school-wide tutoring initiative for ESL students. Raj, the Indian-American boy who'd once been mocked for his accent, led a campaign to have diverse cultural holidays recognized in the school calendar. And the equation? It didn't just return. It exploded. What started as 6 students in the corner of a dusty library grew into a weekly forum attended by hundreds. Students from neighboring schools joined in through virtual meetings. Guest speakers, including professors, authors, and activists, began volunteering to teach sessions. Topics ranged from racial bias in AI to hidden histories of resistance movements. Tiana's project had become a revolution. She never asked to be the leader of it. But leadership, like light, finds those who aren't afraid to shine. On a rainy Friday afternoon, Ms. Raymond asked her to stay after class. She handed Tiana a letter, handwritten and sealed. It came for you. No return address. But you'll want to read it. Tiana opened it slowly. It read, "Dear Tiana, I want to apologize. I was one of the students who doubted you. Not because I thought you were incapable, but because I was afraid of what your brilliance meant for the rest of us. Seeing you rise forced me to look at myself, at my silence, at my compliance, and I hated that feeling. But now, I'm grateful for it, because it woke me up. Thank you for being who you are. Thank you for not folding when the rest of us turned our backs. You changed me. Sincerely, someone who's better because of you." Tiana folded the letter quietly and smiled. Not because she needed the praise, but because it meant her work had pierced deeper than resistance. It had begun to reshape the very people who once held her back. 1 month later, Tiana stood at a local university auditorium, invited as the keynote speaker for the city's Youth Leadership Summit. She wore her natural hair in a halo crown. She didn't flinch at the microphone anymore. She looked out at the sea of young faces and said, "I used to think my voice was too small to matter, that someone like me had to earn the right to be taken seriously. But I know better now." She held up a photo, her first day in that advanced classroom, alone among 30 students. "I was the only one then, but I promise you, I won't be the last." As the room filled with standing applause, she felt it. Not pride, not victory, but peace. The kind of peace that only comes when you've walked through fire and come out carrying the flame. Later, as the evening sun dipped low behind the trees, she sat quietly on the steps of the auditorium. No cameras, no applause, just the breeze in her hair and the sound of her own breath. She opened her journal, its pages still half empty, and began to write. Not about what had happened, but what came next. Because Tiana Brooks was just getting started, and the world, whether it was ready or not, would hear her roar.